pleased to have you all here, and welcome to our Facebook audience. Pleased that you're viewing with us today. We have a great speaker, Kevin Calvey, who's going to uncover all of the political dirt going on in Oklahoma County from end to end.
And heavy on the all.
Yeah, heavy on the all. So, Kevin, it's great to have you here, and we'll have you up here in a few minutes. But before we get started, if you would, let's all stand, and I'm going to ask Mike Sawyer to open in prayer, and then Paul Kelly to lead us in the pledge.
Heavenly Father, King of the universe, we come before you today in the matchless name of Jesus. He sits on a throne as we speak at your right hand, and he is our King, our Savior, our elder brother, and our friend. And we thank you for that, Lord. Father, we thank you for the fact that we have enough freedom in this country still to be able to come here and attend a meeting like this, to where things can actually be spoken of that are going on behind the scenes that we need to know about. Father, I would pray this morning that you would give us wisdom from your throne to know what to do with the information that we have, that we would be mindful that we are to seek your kingdom and your righteousness first. I pray you'd watch over this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Touch your colors and salute. Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some of you may have noticed when you're reading through your Bibles and you finish with the book of Malachi, you come to the book of Matthew. And you may have noticed at the end of the book of Matthew that Jesus, in his parting words, said, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me." And the commission is to disciple nations. That's what we're here for today, is discipling nations, governments, city councils. And that is our calling. And Christ came to redeem us, that we might be able to fulfill our one and only calling. And that's the calling he gave Adam in Genesis 1 and 2, to exercise godly dominion over the planet and to guard and protect the garden, Genesis 2:15. And you'll actually have to read your Hebrew Bible to get that, because most translations talk about cultivating the gardens. I guess they thought that sounded nicer. But the Hebrew word shamar is guard and protect. Obviously something he did not do. That is our calling. And that is why we're here today, and that's why Kevin is here. And I've enjoyed a relationship with Kevin and what he's doing. And it's nice to have godly people in positions of authority. And you're going to hear what happens when that godly men stand in authority. But before we introduce Kevin, I asked Mike Sawyer. There have been many times I thought we should give Mike a little bit of time to talk about all the things he does with the John Birch Society. And I've enjoyed Mike because he understands that unless a culture, unless a nation is built on the Word of God, it is sailing a sinking ship. Our Puritan founders knew that. Those who built Western civilization knew that. Western civilization is built actually with one foot in Greek philosophy and the other foot in biblical theology. But our Puritan forefathers, their feet were both planted firmly in biblical theology, and that's where we need to move in the future. Without that, we have no future, because Jesus is Lord and no one else is. And we have to sail with him. But I've asked Mike, he may not follow up on exactly what I've said, but Mike, just whatever is on your mind today politically, if you would come up here and talk to us.
Change the mic for the little guy here. There we go. Can you hear me? Okay. I was in a pastor's office in Collinsville yesterday. And, when we hear that Jesus has been given all authority on heaven, in heaven and earth down here, and that we are supposed to go and disciple the nations as Christians, that is our calling. It isn't just getting somebody to walk a sawdust trail and say a prayer. That's not what it is. Okay, and the idea of discipling the nations, as we look at the Puritans, and it was the Puritans that shaped my theology. I was converted at age 32 from a life of, I'm not going to get into it. It was bad. Okay? But the Puritans were very serious about reforming not just the church, but society. The world was to be reformed. Jesus said, pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay? Do we have to wait for some 1,000-year reign, some temple somewhere? Do we have to wait for all of that stuff? He didn't tell his disciples to wait for all that stuff. He didn't tell them to pray for something that can't possibly happen. All right? How do we know that we're praying in the will of God? Because God's Word tells us that it's His will. Right? Anyway, I say that to say this. I was sitting in his pastor's office yesterday, and he said, I cannot believe how Christians have handed over everything to Donald Trump. Okay? Now, he voted for Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump. I will vote for Donald Trump again. Okay? I'm not here to endorse him. Because there are things going on in his administration, like how they're bullying other countries to accept the LGBTQ agenda and hammering them financially. That's going on. And this USMCA, this trade agreement, which, by the way, Mexico and Canada are now calling a treaty, which is really what it is. Okay, once a treaty is signed into law, it's the law of the land. The Constitution tells us that. Okay? The USMCA, first of all, I want to go back. One of the main reasons that I voted for Trump was because he promised to kill the Trans-Pacific Partnership the first day in office, and yes, he did. He did. Why? Because the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like NAFTA, like all of these things, are steps where the United States of America is handing its sovereignty over to the UN, which is antichrist, ungodly, anti-American organization. All right? Well, the USMCA, so Trump said that he would kill NAFTA as well. Do you all remember that campaign promise? Not renegotiate it. Then all of a sudden we're morphing and we're renegotiating. Okay? Now the USMCA comes out, and Richard Hawes of the the day that the negotiations were finished, and by the way, Robert Lighthizer, who was the negotiator on USMCA, has been a CFR member, Council on Foreign Relations member for decades, and in his previous life, he handled cases for other countries against the United States in international courts, things like that. This is who Trump has for his negotiator. I'm not attacking Trump. Understand this. We got to look at the principles here. We've got to look at what's actually happening. When that agreement was negotiated, the same day Richard Hawes, who's the head hog over at CFR now, came out and tweeted, "Oh, this USMCA is a great thing. I'm so happy that the White House has finally accepted trade because it's TPP and NAFTA with a few tweaks." This thing is going to negate every single thing. The tariffs? Forget it. LGBTQ? You see, it's a trade agreement, so that means that they're going to have authority over who you hire, who you fire internationally. The wall, good luck with the wall, because it's who's down there guarding the wall and letting whoever they want to in counts. Right now, they're still taking illegals and seeding them throughout the country. What do you think they're getting ready for? 2020. That's what they're getting ready for. Don't think that this is a slam dunk that Trump is going to get reelected. Don't think that. These people are serious. Okay? Now, what I want to say is this. Christians, as a rule, because of our weak theology in this country, as it's been morphed over the last 200 years, what we do is we get concerned about politics and government when it's election time. Or we listen to Fox News and they're ranting about whether Hillary Clinton goes to jail or not, or whatever. Let me tell you something. The conspiracy was done, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, it's been around since the late 1700s in its modern iteration. It started with the Illuminati in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. And they took over the Mason lodges in Europe, and the European Union is a direct result of that, and Karl Marx was an Illuminist, and you can go right down through the line, and you can see this thing operating for the last 300 years. Okay? Well, here's the bottom line. These people don't think like we do. We think, oh my goodness, what about Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton was thrown under the bus when she lost in 2016. That's why her and her husband are only getting $2 a ticket now when they speak. She's thrown under the bus. They're done. It doesn't matter. Oh, would I feel better if I saw her thrown in jail? Oh, sure. Bill Clinton should have been thrown in jail back in the 1990s when he was selling our nuclear and military secrets to China for campaign cash. You do understand that that impeachment started out with that, not with Monica Lewinsky. You do know that, right? How come that was never talked about by Ken Starr and all those superstars? Why? Okay? This conspiracy, and it is a real conspiracy, has a generational plan. They are not thinking about Hillary Clinton, and they don't care about any of these issues that you're hearing on Fox News. And let's not forget that the guy that owns Fox News is a CFR member as well, and has been for decades. Probably even back when he was a porn king in Australia. Oh, you didn't know that? These people are not conservatives. They're neocons, and they just got a different slant to tell you what you want to hear every night and get you angry enough to keep coming back and buying their sponsors' stuff. But the people that are actually doing what's going on with this USMCA, they're thinking 50 years down the line. You might even be thinking about saving your kids. They're thinking about your great-grandchildren. If this thing goes into effect, there won't be tariffs. The holes in the wall will be just as porous as they are now without a wall. You're going to have the same situation because the same people are running this deal. I mean, we're getting these reports all the time. That they're seeding, they're taking these illegals and they're seeding them throughout the country. They've been doing it for decades. How come, well, you know, Trump this, Trump that. These people are thinking far beyond Donald Trump. I'm not against Donald Trump. Okay? And the problem is, you see, the paradigm is this. Oh, if you say anything against what's going on in that administration, then you hate Donald Trump and you're an anti-American and you're this and you're that. No! We can't baptize the guy, though, folks.
Right.
I didn't vote for him because he's some kind of a professing Christian.
No.
Okay? I voted for him because God help us if we had Hillary Clinton in office. All right? But keep in mind, these people are continuing their agenda. Now, there's rumors out there, oh, Trump knows what he's doing, and he's going to, maybe and maybe not. But I can tell you this, that doesn't change the fact that one thing we need to do is we need to be on the phone to these phony congressmen and senators of ours and tell them to stop this thing, because they're going to vote on it in August. That's the scuttlebutt that we're getting. Get on the phone, please, because this affects everything.
Right.
You have any idea what we lost with NAFTA? Millions of jobs. But that's not the issue. NAFTA has its own court system. Did you know that? You know why you know that? Because the John Birch Society's been telling you that for 30 years. That's why. So, I'm not going to go on a rant against Fox News, although I wish everybody would turn it off. And I wish everybody would turn off Rush and Sean and all these other clowns. Because you're not getting the news. You're not getting the issues. Okay? I would ask you, first of all, to make the phone calls and tell them to stop this thing. And your Langford and all the rest of them are red, they're just going to kowtow, because that's, they're all in it together. They're all globalists. That's the bottom line. Okay? But make the calls, put the pressure on. Maybe we can stop it. And secondly, if you're not a member of the John Birch Society, I've got applications in the car. Thanks.
I forgot to tell you, Mike, please speak your mind. Don't hold back next time, okay? Just tell us what you think. Yeah, well, thank you. And Mike and I are both big Trump fans in many ways, but we have to be wise, and he's right. We're about to give away national sovereignty with this, and I would beg you, please call your congressman, and we'll try to get something in the next week's. If you could remind me, Mike, in next week's email, I need to put your picture in there. Do you want me to use the picture since you've lost weight? Yeah. So maybe you need to go to the photographer. Mike's lost about, 40 pounds? 20 pounds? 32 pounds. Yeah, I'm not counting. So I'm impressed with that. And but thank you, Mike. And these evil forces obviously have been going on since the Garden of Eden. Our first parents, Adam and Eve, we think of them as nice people. They're our first parents. And I've said before, Eve was the first Hillary Clinton. She looked at the Word of God, and she listened to the Word of Satan, and she realized, maybe the Word of God is not my ultimate presupposition. Maybe I have some better ideas, and maybe I could be sort of like God myself. And that's the battle that's going on. Now, God redeemed her. God redeemed Adam. And by the grace of God, He's redeemed you, and you have a calling. And part of your calling is to make those phone calls, because we're out to not only, we didn't get saved and born again to take that rocket ship ride for an eternal vacation, all expenses paid. In case you didn't know it, that's not why Christ saved you. It's a part of the package. But you were born and anointed for a purpose. And I'm pleased to be able to introduce Kevin Calvey today, and he has served with distinction in the legislature, and then now is a county commissioner, and cleaning up some, to me it's just unimaginable the amount of dirt that's in the state of Oklahoma and all over the world in politics, as we have ungodly people in office who are there to reign and not to serve. And Kevin's here to serve. He's here to serve the people. And Kevin, I won't take up any more of your time, but feel free to take the time you need, and then when you're done, open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for inviting me to speak, and thanks to all of you for being here and for being active in our government. We heard a little bit ago about some international law stuff. I'm going to redirect your attention to hyper-local stuff that we have going on in Oklahoma County. But first, I understand that your speaker last week was talking about illegal immigration, and Bob had mentioned that to me, and I'm going to give you just a couple of anecdotes. Last November, my family and I took a family vacation down to Big Bend National Park, which long frontage there along the Rio Grande, and it is very surprising that a short stone's throw. The Rio Grande is not a very wide river. And there was one point, I got these pictures of my family standing there. There's a boat launch into the river right behind us. Down, less than a quarter mile downstream, there's an RV park on the National Park side. And in between there's actually a hot spring that bubbles up, and people sit around in the hot tub in the Rio Grande on the American side. It would be very easy for anybody to come and just go across the river and probably get up to about your waist, I guess, at that point, and just wade across. And so the kind of lack of security was very surprising to me. The other anecdote is, as many of you know, I did 2 stints in the legislature. After the first one, I went to serve our country for a year with the Army in Baghdad, Iraq. And my mission there was prosecuting terrorists out in a hostile fire zone in the Iraqi court system. It was very unusual. You know what the minimum jail sentence, prison sentence, for being an illegal alien is in Iraq? Let me want to hazard a guess. The minimum sentence, 15 years in prison. Well, let me tell you, at Iraqi prison, whew, that's the minimum. So there were times when we were bringing cases where we had, be careful how I say this, but we had classified intelligence, right? That this person we were bringing for them in their court system was a really, really, really bad guy. But we could not declassify that information to tell the Iraqi judges. We didn't want to burn the intel sources and things like that. So we were trying to present things to the Iraqis, hoping that they would take action on it, but not able to give them all the facts. And they would routinely, the guy just said, hey, I've been here for 10 years, but I lost my passport. Too bad, 15 years in prison. They were very serious about it. So do I have compassion for poor people fleeing violence in some of these countries in Latin America? Sure, I'm sure we all do. But you have to have an orderly system. And we do not have an inhumane system in America dealing with immigrants compared to other countries. And we should not be ashamed of wanting to enforce our laws. So I appreciate people for paying attention to that issue. Let's talk local government for a little bit. First, I did want to say, you mentioned very accurately, Bob, I love that passage you cited from the Gospel of Matthew. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age, to the end of the Gospel of Matthew. A lot of people forget that obey part, right? That we're supposed to obey the commands of Christ. It's not enough to just say, okay, I believe in Jesus. You have to obey. That's what the Bible itself says. I appreciate you also mentioning the book of Genesis and our mandate there. Probably my favorite verse in the book of Genesis is Genesis 1:28, which some of you will be laughing at now why I think that's a great verse. It's be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. We were expecting our 7th child now, so I do like that one, if you can't, or even if you can, convert people, well, just make more Christians, right? So, raise them up in the way they should go. That's another biblical injunction. So we do that. So county government. So I ran for this office, county commissioner. There's really 2 parts to the job. I'm not going to talk about the one part, which is roads, although I was visiting with a couple of people earlier about a road issue, and we have a very good road crew in my district, District 3, which is basically roughly the north 1/3 of Oklahoma County. And feel free, if you see potholes out there, to let me know. There's about a 90% chance that it's not my jurisdiction, but we'll forward it on to the appropriate jurisdiction, and happy to do that. Kevin Calvey at OklahomaCounty.org. And that's an important part of my job. Actually, most of the people that work directly for me are dealing with the roads and all that. It was running well under my predecessor, Ray Vaughn, and it's running well now, and we'll make sure it continues to run well. The reason, though, I ran for the job is not to make big changes in the way the roads were done, because it was already going pretty well. The reason I ran for this office is because we have a terrible problem with our local criminal justice system and the county jail. Okay, those who are above a certain age might remember when it was built, and there was construction problems and things like that. Some people got indicted. Some of you may be aware, maybe you're not, about many of the problems that have persisted at the jail that have nothing to do with the design of the building. How many of y'all know that we, in the last few years, you, the taxpayers, have been hit with $20 million worth of legal judgments against you because of negligence by the sheriff's office that operates the jail? That's a staggering figure, given that their total budget is about $50 million. And now that's not all in 1 year, 20 million, several years, but it's a serious problem. That there are many incidents that occur in the jail, and that is a serious problem. Now, some people will say, well, who cares what happens to people who are in jail? They're a bunch of jailbirds. Well, let me give you a couple reasons why you should care. Well, number one, how about your own pocket? Because we get sued when they mistreat inmates. I'll give you a couple other reasons. Number one, Matthew 25, 35 through 40, many of you are familiar with that. Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. And a little bit later on, when I was in prison, you visited me. That tells me that Jesus didn't say don't have prisons and don't have jails, but he said we're supposed to be humane to people that are in that situation. So I think there's a biblical mandate to be humane to people. Secondly, I want to stress this: jail is different than prison. I'll post something about, we have these problems in our jail, and we could be doing things differently. And invariably, somebody will comment on Facebook, not invariably, but sometimes, somebody will comment and say, well, you don't want to go to jail, just don't do something wrong. That might, and only might, be an appropriate answer if you're talking about prison. Jail is different. 80% of the people in jail, unlike prison, where everybody has had their day in court, been convicted, either pled guilty or been convicted by a jury of their peers. In jail, 80% of the people in the Oklahoma County Jail have never been convicted of anything. The other 20% are people who are either awaiting pickup from the State Department of Corrections to go to prison, or in some cases you can actually be convicted as a punishment for a period of time in the county jail. But 80% of the people there are awaiting trial or awaiting adjudication of their case. You can go to jail, to the Oklahoma County Jail, for peeling paint on your house. Did you know that? Some of you might remember about 3 years in a row I tried to fight that in the state legislature. There are municipalities that have a property maintenance code that says if you, broken window or whatever, but also just peeling paint on your house, they can mail you, just regular mail, a ticket to go appear in their environmental court. If you don't show up, a warrant will be issued for your arrest. I have seen people come to me terrified because they were on vacation, the long guy thinking about whatever the case, that something was supposed to get done didn't, or they're just too poor to paint their house, old elderly people. And they had a warrant out for their arrest for that. You can get arrested for that. I know a guy who got arrested earlier this year, Oklahoma County Jail, on a warrant from Florida for engaging in business without a license. Is that worth sending somebody to jail over? You can go to jail if you miss court on a traffic ticket. A bench warrant is issued for your arrest. Is that a good reason to send somebody to jail? I don't know. I would suggest it's not. Now, sometimes I'll have people say, well, how else are you going to get them to pay the fine? If you put somebody in jail, most people that go to jail are too poor to bond out. And we've done, I'll talk about it a little bit more, we've made some headway on what we call OR, owner cognizance bonds, or conditional bonds, but still there's a lot of people on cash bond in our jails. And if you're just too poor to bond out, it could very easily end up costing the taxpayers more just in the daily cost for jail than the fine will be. That's not good fiscal sense. You know, we're supposed to be fiscal conservatives, right? Conservatives never, I hope, but certainly fiscal conservative. Well, that doesn't make fiscal sense. And then even if the fine is more than the days in jail, you know, if somebody spends more than a couple of days in jail, think they're going to keep their job? No. Then they're going to go on unemployment. Their family may have to go on welfare, public assistance. They may lose their kids to DHS custody with all the trauma that occurs through that. There's a lot of cascading effects that happen from over jailing people. I'm not going to talk at all about you can separate the topic of criminal justice reform into two parts, really. One would be sentencing reform. I'm not going to talk about that, okay? You know, that's all the state legislature. We have nothing to do with it in the county, and it really doesn't impact us very much. But there's another part of it called pretrial justice reform, and that very much does impact us in Oklahoma County and in any county jail. And there, I do think it's appropriate that, I mean, if you think about it, if you haven't been convicted yet, you are what under American law? Innocent. We are, the Fifth Amendment, due process, the way we often phrase that is you are innocent until proven guilty. That doesn't mean, you know, well, we're going to keep you anyway because you might be guilty. No. 80% of the people in that jail are legally innocent. You ought to have better, if you're going to hold somebody against their will in a jail when they're legally innocent, you better have a doggone good reason, right? And that reason really ought to be they are an immediate danger to the public. Now don't get me wrong, clearly people who are violent criminals and things like that need to be behind bars. I mentioned earlier I prosecuted terrorists for the army in Iraq. I got 8 of them sentenced to death by hanging. Okay, I'm obviously tough on crime. But it does not make sense to put people in jail that are not a threat to the public. Let them out on an owner cognizance bond, conditional bond, and then they come back into court, and then they can be adjudicated and go from there. Or, in the case of a traffic ticket, rather than issuing a bench warrant, shouldn't we maybe just turn that conviction into a civil judgment, and then you can garnish their wages, seize tax returns, put a lien on their car, civil methods of collecting that debt that will still punish the offense, but in a way that is cost efficient and more humane for society, both for the offender and for the taxpayers. Does that not make sense? So that's one of the things that I wanted to visit with you here about. If you want to look at the totality of the problem with our jail, think of it as like a 3-legged stool. Okay, a 3-legged stool, if one of the legs doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't work, right? It topples over. Well, the population in our jail is one of those 3 legs. In the last couple of years, we've made huge headway in bringing down the population in our jail. And I will credit some of our judges, particularly Judge Strong and Judge Henderson, Judge McRae, who have been doing these OR bond hearings to allow more people to not have to spend time in jail before they are going to court. I'll also credit the recent former police chief in Oklahoma City, Bill City. Chief City instituted a cite and release policy rather than just arresting everybody that they picked up for little misdemeanor nonviolent crimes. Those 2 things have brought down the population in jail over 40%. We're going averaging about 1,650 now. It was over 2,600 just a couple years ago. All reforms we're talking about doing in the jail now would be 100 times harder, at least 10 times harder, without that going well. I think we probably still have some room to reduce that population, but at some point you're going to have some people in jail, you're going to have violent people, etc. We know this. So what are the other 2 legs? They're going to be the facility and the operations of the jail. Okay, the facility we know that had some flaws. Nobody builds 13-story jails anymore. It makes the elevators in that building a single point of failure. It does make it more difficult to man the jail. It makes various things more difficult, makes medical treatment more difficult. There's a number of things that are made more difficult by the design and some of the original poor building of the jail. Most of the kind of building issues have been dealt with, but the design, there are some issues. We do need to do something different with the facility of the jail. But I would suggest to you that the vast majority of the problems in the jail right now have to do with the operations of the jail. As many of you may be aware from reading in the news, very recently, the Oklahoma County Board of County Commissioners, on my motion, approved the establishment of what's called the Oklahoma County Criminal Justice Authority, commonly known as the Jail Trust. This is not a new idea. A grand jury suggested getting a jail trust for the first time in 1995, and several different citizen commissions over the last 24 years
have also urged. I can project, I'm a trial lawyer, so.
We've got another mic.
Okay, we'll continue on while we're waiting on the technical thing. So, this is not a new thing. It's something that's been suggested by people. Okay. Okay, they'll turn me up. By conservatives, liberals, all kinds of people over the years. But the sheriff's office has fought it. The reason why having a jail trust is better, there's several things, but one of my observations is it's one of focus, okay? So I want you to remember a couple of figures, and who's good at math here? Who wants a good math test real quick? Okay, write down these figures, maybe you need pencil and paper, whatever. 50.3 million, 50.3 million. And then 31.1 million. What's the difference? Actually, no, off the top of my head, but I want to see how good you all are at it. Yeah, 19.2 million. Okay, let me tell you what those figures represent. The last year for which the county has full budget figures for what the sheriff's office received. That's both received in terms of county appropriations from your property tax dollars, as well as certain statutory fees and things like that that go to them as the operator of the jail, or some for law enforcement purposes, as well as some funds coming into them from various vendors, like the telephone service vendor at the jail, who actually, because they make money on it, they pay the county for that vending contract. All those things together totaled $50.3 million in the 2017-18 year. The 31.1 million is the latest audit done on the sheriff's office and jail by a company called MGT. MGT audits jails and prisons nationwide. They know what they're doing. And that's what they said the sheriff's office was actually spending on the jail, 31.1 million. That leaves 19.2 million for all the other functions of the sheriff. Rick Horner has inside knowledge, so don't you answer. But who else, knows kind of well, what's the major function of the sheriff other than running the jail? Law enforcement, right? In where? Everywhere in the county? No.
Unincorporated areas.
In the unincorporated areas. Yeah, how many people live in the unincorporated areas of Oklahoma County? 19,000. So you're spending $19.2 million to guard 19,000 people? They told us in an open meeting, and for a few months now, it said they have 110 employees outside the jail. That's about $180,000 per employee. Now they're saying they have 187. They can't get a straight answer, right? But how, the numbers don't add up for what they're saying they do. I have a hard time seeing where they even need 110 employees outside the jail function. So, if you look at that level of law enforcement, that is exponentially higher than the ratio of law enforcement in Oklahoma City or any other municipality in our state. It's way higher than the national average. It's probably higher than just about any jurisdiction around. They do have some other functions. They have to serve civil process papers and a few other things like that, but they don't need that many employees to do that. So the question is, are we getting a good return for our taxpayer dollars out of this? I would suggest no. Now, I want to ask you this question. If you were the sheriff, running for sheriff, you have to be a CLEAT certified law enforcement officer. Okay, so you're a cop, okay? Would you want to run the Oklahoma County Jail? Wouldn't you be glad to have somebody else take over the jail, that big headache off you? Wouldn't you be glad? So why aren't they? Is it maybe because of that $19.2 million? Is it that they're maybe using the jail as a cash cow for other stuff? Is it maybe campaign workers
from all those employees? I don't know. I don't have the answers to all that, but what I do know is that the numbers don't lie, and that there is a lot of over expenditure in the sheriff's office for a lot of stuff. We've seen it for years. Military vehicles, the parades. Okay, so recently they're trying to sell it now, but they bought an MRAP. Who knows what an MRAP is? A mine-resistant armored personnel carrier developed for use in Iraq to cart troops around so they couldn't get blown up too bad by IEDs, roadside bombs. Where are the IEDs in Oklahoma City or Oklahoma County? I mean, come on, people. They still have some military vehicle that they use. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. They had a dive team. They finally got rid of that, but they still have a bomb squad. How many bombs are going off in Deer Creek? Okay, Stephanie, in your area? I mean, seriously. I mean, what do they need this for? How many of y'all have ever seen sheriff's deputies handing out tickets on I-40 or I-35? Right? Who has not seen that? Nobody has not seen that. Why are they doing that? Why aren't they sticking to their lane and just patrolling in the rural areas? Well, they had this attitude under a former sheriff, John Wetzel, who was forced out of office under threat of indictment.
Right.
I was told that by the DA himself. It's not a secret. And, you know, he had this attitude that we're the top, the sheriff's office is the top cop in the county, and by God, we're going to patrol everywhere, and we're, you know, all these other municipal police departments are kind of subordinate to us. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And that hasn't changed a whole lot under the current sheriff. There's still this disparity in the funding, and we need to address that. What we need to do is right-size government. This is true in not just this area, but in all areas of government. The state needs to do it. You know, I fought that battle. It's kind of sometimes a lonely battle in the legislature. I voted against tax increases, not because I didn't think that some of the purposes being cited weren't worthy. I certainly think teachers deserved and still deserve a pay raise. But I just looked around at how much money the state government was wasting and felt like we could do that simply by better budgeting rather than squeezing more out of the taxpayers. There are those who would have you believe that, you know, what we need to do in Oklahoma County is raise taxes in order to fund the sheriff more so they can avoid problems in the jail. I'm here to tell you, you raise all the taxes you want, you could build all the new jails you want, but if you have the same operation in that jail, it's not getting any better. So what we need is better budgeting and better operations. One of the things this trust has the authority to do is to decide who will operate the jail. That's why it was so controversial when it came through. It was passed on a unanimous vote by the Board of County Commissioners. There was one of the commissioners, I will cite one commissioner who has been just absolutely courageous on this for a long time, and that is Commissioner Brian Mon. Many of you know him. Brian is a good conservative, and he has been trying to make this reform for some time, but it just wasn't occurring. I got in and I started pushing for it right away when I got sworn into office in January, and eventually the third commissioner did come around as well on it, so that's good. The sheriff's office fought us tooth and nail all the way through. When we first brought it up at a meeting, they actually bussed in their employees in uniform, you know, to be at our meeting and voice their displeasure with it. They sent uniformed deputies, I got the pictures, uniformed deputies out to campaign door to door against this trust. How is that appropriate? And they did that just in, I think, early May, late April, early May. So this is what we're up against in dealing with it. You know, it is my observation that, you know, I appreciate some people talk about, you know, larger conspiracies or whatever. It's usually just small vested interests that are creating most of the problems in our world, and certainly in our state, in our county. And when a vested interest is fighting reform because they are, I'm not suggesting, by the way, anybody's pocketing money personally or anything like that, but when their operation, their empire, their political empire is profiting at the expense of proper operation of the jail, that's a problem. Let me give you just a couple examples of some operational issues. I would encourage you, by the way, if you ever have a chance, how many of y'all have ever seen our county jail? Not as an inmate, just as an observer, okay. Have you also seen, have anybody ever seen the Tulsa County Jail? I would encourage you to look at the disparity there. The difference between the way they operate the jail in Tulsa County versus ours is night and day. Theirs is, it's run humanely. They are in open pods, so 16 hours a day, except in 3 of the 24 pods that are for restricted. That's for like people who have created the problem while in the jail that need to be separated. But in 21 of the 24 pods in the Tulsa County Jail, the inmates are out of their cells 16 hours a day. They're not out of their cells more than 2 hours a day in Oklahoma County. They're locked down 22 hours a day. I would get pretty irritable if you locked me in a cell, especially with 2 or 3 other people, or not 2 or 3, 1 or 2 other people for 22 hours a day. So no wonder they have problems. The level of violence is higher in the Oklahoma County Jail. That's why there's so many lawsuits, at least a contributing factor. There's more altercations, etc. It is a real difference, and it's all the attitude and the approach that they take. So in the Tulsa County Jail, their jailers are not cops. They are jailers. They're not CLEAT certified law enforcement officers. Their maintenance people are maintenance people. They're not CLEAT certified law enforcement officers. In the Oklahoma County Jail, they're all CLEAT certified. Let me show you an ad. This is crazy. This is an ad, I don't know if it's still up on the county website, but it was until recently. It's from the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office advertising for a job position for a maintenance detention officer. Great introduction for a law enforcement career. Applicant must successfully attend and complete a 120-hour training academy. That's CLEAT. That's how you become a cop. Any experience in plumbing, electrical, mechanical, or construction is okay. So I guess if I can fix the plunger on my toilet, I qualify to be a maintenance person at the Oklahoma County Jail. But I gotta go be a cop. When our maintenance people come before our county commissioner meetings, they're actually carrying guns. I mean, the attitude there is we're all cops and we're gonna be the, in Tulsa County, look, you're a professional jailer and they pay them better. They treat them not like second-class citizens to the uniform people, but rather as a career path in their own right. So there's just some attitude differences I think that could be different. The sheriff's office has attacked me and attacked me and attacked me. Okay, whatever. I mean, I had beheaders in Iraq threaten to hunt me down and kill me someday. I think I've dealt with a lot scarier people than that. So it's annoying, it's irritating, but I kind of knew we might be getting into this when I took this job. But it's my observation that the reason why there are long-standing public policy problems are because there's some vested interest who has a stake in maintaining the status quo and will fight to keep that status quo a lot harder than those who wish to reform it. That's true in all kinds of areas in our public policy. And it is also true that it is fairly rare that you find elected officials who are willing to put up with that kind of vitriol, venom, and nonsense when you're trying to reform something. Brian Wan is one of those people. I will say some of our other county officials, I think, are doing a good job as well, have been asking tough questions. David Hooten is our county clerk, Rick Warren is our court clerk, and Larry Stein, our county assessor. So we actually have a majority, 5 out of 8, on the county budget board that seem to be reform-minded in this. And the taxpayers deserve better. Taxpayers deserve that we are able to address the facility issues without going back and squeezing more money out of the taxpayers. To the extent we can possibly do that, that's what we should do. That will mean right-sizing the sheriff's budget. And they're going to howl and scream. They're going to call me soft on crime. They're going to call me anti-law enforcement. I'll guarantee it, I'm not. Obviously, I've got a couple dozen of my clients in my law practice are police officers. I work with Army CID every day in Iraq. I love cops. And the problem with our system is not police officers, it's greedy governments sending those police officers to deliver warrants and things like that, which are excessive. And in treating a system of housing inmates, people who do need some correction, in a way that is not humane, not really Christian, and is not cost effective for the taxpayers. So I'd ask as you are talking with your friends and neighbors, when you hear people saying, oh, they're just trying to hurt law enforcement and all that, you tell them the truth. Please do. Those of us trying to do reform down there really do need it. I'm hopeful that the new jail trust will create a better system for operating the jail, and a system that's more cost efficient for the taxpayers, more humane for the inmates, and quite frankly also a better environment for those who work in the jail as well. That's also very important. You'll hear people say, oh, you know, they're out to get the employees in the jail. Not so. I would like to raise their pay, actually, and treat them like professional detention officers rather than junior police officers. That's how we need to treat people in there. So when you hear people talking about what's going on in the jail, please tell them the truth. And, you know, because if you don't, then the reform, you know, this is why reform doesn't happen, is because as some people would cite him as the first conservative, the British statesman Edmund Burke, who said very famously in the late 1800s or late 1700s, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Thank you for your attention.
Boy, that was fantastic. And as he was speaking, I was realizing God has called each one of us to be the salt of the earth, and this is what it means, is to correct these egregious problems. It doesn't just affect your pocketbook, it affects the lives of people who are locked up, lose their jobs, and their families go haywire. So we have just a couple of minutes for questions. I see one here, one here, one here. Oh my land, everybody has thousands of questions.
I'll try to keep my responses short to get to more of them.
Keep them short, and I'm going to pass this microphone around to the closest person, but I will get to you over here.
I was just wondering how we compare with Tulsa on how many people die in our jails and are found dead.
They have very, very few, and we have way too many. We are exponentially higher than Tulsa County. Now, I will say some of the people who die in jail, it's not the fault of the jail or whatever. Some people that are brought there are very ill to begin with. So don't think that just because you hear somebody dies in jail, that means necessarily that something went wrong.
But if we're a lot more than Tulsa.
Yes, we are an outlier, very much so.
But if an inmate is saying that they're sick for 3 or 4 days and they die of a burst appendix, that is a problem.
That is a problem.
So the question that I have is, of the 80% of the people who are just waiting trial, what percentage of those end up going on to prison?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It is a good question. I don't know the answer. I mean, not everybody does, but I don't know the answer.
Commissioner, I'm a newcomer to the area, more or less. How long have you been in office?
Since January 2nd.
And you'll be in office for how long?
4 years.
4 years, and you're among 8 other commissioners?
There's 3 of us commissioners, but, and we set some of the policy for like the real estate county, including the jail. And we have the authority to do certain things, like we've set up this jail trust. Now, in the jail trust, there's 9 people, 2 elected officials, myself and Sheriff Taylor, by state law. You have to have 1 commissioner, you have to have the sheriff on there. And then there's 7 other members who were chosen by us, commissioners, who have to be private citizens, cannot be elected officials. So that's brand new. The 8 is the county budget board. So budget decisions in not every county, you have to be a budget board county, which Oklahoma County has chosen to be, has been for decades. So all 8 elected officials in the county, including the 3 commissioners, jointly resolve the budget. So that would be the 3 commissioners, the sheriff, court clerk, county treasurer, and county assessor.
Okay, it was really designed to ask how recent is this effort to do this reform that you've been speaking about?
Very recent.
And so it hasn't even been tried before?
Let me back up. It's very recent in terms of actual official action of the county, just because there wasn't a political one. In terms of citizens urging it, it's been urged for 24 years. Right. And then have other counties done it? Yes. There are. Tulsa County has a trust. They have chosen to hire, they actually do have the sheriff, and then the sheriff, they have a very forward-thinking sheriff. I'll give my hats off to Sheriff Regalado in Tulsa. What happened there was their former Sheriff Glantz was indicted. Many of his top people were indicted. So somebody ran for that office who had never worked for the sheriff's office, who had been a Tulsa Police Department homicide detective, Vic Regalado, and he won. So there was a clean slate, clean break difference from the past. I mean, they had huge lawsuits coming out of their sheriff's office, etc. We've never had that clean break. The current sheriff was the right-hand guy of Sheriff Wetzel for 14 years before he ever, was elected here, and elected in a special election with 34% of the vote in the primary, I think. So there's never been that clean break. So for us, the trust I think we'll be able to provide that clean break, and I think that's critically important. So hope that helps. Yes?
Of the problems in the jail, has anybody done any research as to contractors not doing what they were paid to do? Like, instead of using 6-bag concrete, they use 4.
Yeah.
And the companies change hands all the time. It's the people that run it. If we build a new jail, are we going to hire the same idiots to build it?
I would suspect not. And the question is whether there's any research done. Yes, I think several people were indicted. I don't know, that was 28 years ago, so I don't know all the results of those, but I would hope that we would look at, making sure, well, I will certainly, to the extent I have something to say about it, and I will be making sure that we have competent and ethical people doing any work at our jail.
Good.
Well, Kevin, you know most of this, but some of these people may not. I could go on for hours talking about it. I don't want to do that, but, Wetzel, and this will sound like I'm just bad-mouthing Wetzel, but I live in the neighborhood with Wetzel and Butch Freeman, some of the, what I call the county cartel that's part of this problem. So I could tell you stuff that make your head spin, but thank God Gary Jones did his job and Wetzel's down the road. But nevertheless, he's always had that short man complex, wanting to run everything. He tried to take over the Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City Police Department and Fire Department. He wanted to be like Broward Day County, where he was the commissioner head of everything. You may not know much about that, but he literally had an effort trying to do that, meetings and all kinds of things trying to do that. I could go on and on with that, but what I wanted to ask you, and you may not have time, but I'd sure love to hear it, and maybe you can come back another time and talk more about it, is while you're in the legislature, I want, if you're willing, because most everybody's tight-lipped about this, don't want to talk about it, the corruption going on with the money being raised within the to keep legislators in there, and like we lost Bobby Cleveland fought and all these guys. The Chris Canada deal is what I want you to talk about, but I don't know if you have time or will be willing, but most everybody's tight-lipped about it, and I don't understand it.
Well, all I will say is that I was disappointed that several conservative legislators got defeated. I gave each one of them $1,000. So obviously I had skin in the game at helping to retain our good conservatives. I also raised money for them, from other people. But there was, obviously, this has been reported in the newspaper, an effort funded at least in part by Michael Bloomberg, the gun control former mayor of New York, to unseat some of these legislators. And evidently there were some current legislators who were a part of that. All I know is what I read in the paper about that. To the extent that's accurate, it's very disappointing. I was certainly disappointed that Bobby and Jeff Cootie down in the Lawton area, and Travis Dunlap, I don't know what a conservative hero he is, up in the Bartlesville area, and I mean many, George Faught, like you said, I mean there's several of them that got defeated, and that was very disappointing to me, obviously, and I think should be a concern to all conservatives. That's all I really know, and I'm going to be able to talk about. I thought it was a shame that they got defeated. Now, it may be, I really haven't been tracking the legislature as much this session and all that. It may be that some of the people that replaced them maybe have turned out to be good. I really don't know. So I don't want to cast aspersions on those legislatures. Every now and again, I do want to go ask them for some policy things, so I don't want to paint with a broad brush. So I'm without meaning any aspersions on those who did prevail. I did think it was unfortunate that some good conservatives did get defeated.
Okay, sorry I was headed to grab my cell phone. We have, I think, a last question, maybe an ultimate question, but last question.
Kevin, I have 3, 1 comment and 2 questions. One comment was I can verify that when somebody goes to the Oklahoma City jail, even though they're innocent, because I have somebody that's close to me that was wrongly accused, and spent time, and finally, a relative of his talked to the right person to get something to happen to get him out of jail. Ultimately, proven innocent. But that happens.
Yes, it does.
And so, question number one is, do you think some of this, like, stronghold that we've got, this cartel, if you will, goes back to the Oklahoma City bombing?
No, I don't think so. I think, first of all, I wouldn't use a loaded term like a cartel or whatever. I'd say just a vested interest. Okay, that's maybe a little bit more. I don't think so. To me, I really was not observing the sheriff's office prior to, I did, John Wetzel defeated the prior sheriff, J.D. Sharp, in, I think it was 1994, I think. You know, Rick? Before then? 92 or 94? After the bombing, anyway. And clearly Wetzel was a problem. Rick referenced our former state auditor, Gary Jones, did an audit on the jail. It wasn't even a full-blown audit, but it turned up millions of dollars worth of missing equipment, including guns. Who knows what happened to those guns?
Yeah.
Cars, there are way too many cars. They have more cars and patrol people. So there were a lot of problems with Wetzel for sure, and they're not gone, many of them. And so before then, I really don't know. That's before my time. So to my knowledge, I don't think it does, but I just don't know.
Okay, I think we're at 5 after. Our clock in the back, that's where we bought it for the speakers, it seems to stop 2 times.
I didn't even notice it.
Yeah, so we put a new battery in it, thought, hey, we're good, but no, it's already stopped.
Well, let me tell you, once again, thank you, Bob, for inviting me. And if you see him, I was hoping I might see Charlie Meadows or Bob Donahue here and then forever and all that, but tell them howdy for me, and I missed them. And it's good to see a lot of friends, and we appreciate you all. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.